A Malawi Anzanga. If you thought political interviews were just boring sit-downs with suits and slogans, then you clearly didn't tune in to Limpopo FM last night. Because Comrade Ntanyiwa didn't just attend an interview, he turned the station into a political battlefield, a comedy show, and a leadership lecture all at once. From the moment he walked into that studio, microphones melted, listeners froze, and hashtags started flying faster than election rumors in Lilongwe. This wasn't your average "thank you for having me" moment. This was Nkhanga Zaona, the show where truth meets fire and ego meets embarrassment. And today on Globalpulsenewz, we're breaking down the 7 explosive moments that made Comrade Ntanyiwa's Limpopo FM appearance go down in Malawi's radio history. Part shock, part entertainment, and 100% unfiltered. So grab your tea, your phone, and your sense of humor, because this ride is about to get louder than a minibus horn in Zimba. Let's begin with moment number 1, the entrance that set the tone for chaos. Picture this, Limpopo FM studio, calm as a Sunday morning. Then, boom, the door swings open and in walks Comrade Ntanyiwa, dressed sharp, confident, and ready to shake tables. The host barely finishes saying "welcome to the show" before Ntanyiwa fires his first line. "We are not here to entertain lies. We are here to fix Malawi." From that second, the air changed. You could almost hear the tension through the radio waves. Listeners started texting in, "Hey, atichania meneyo." Social media lit up within minutes. The studio became less like an interview room and more like a courtroom, with Ntanyiwa as both the lawyer and the judge. He didn't mince words. He named problems, dropped subtle jabs at political rivals, and even threw in humor to soften the blows. In Malawi, everyone wants to lead, but nobody wants to listen. The host's face, priceless. The listeners, hooked. This was no ordinary radio guest. This was a show inside a show. But if you thought the entrance was loud, wait till you hear what he said next, the moment that turned the microphone into a megaphone of truth. Once the applause settled, Ntanyiwa leaned in and dropped a truth bomb that even the FM speakers seemed to tremble from. Malawi si yandale zokazoka. It belongs to its people. And that line, my friend, hit harder than fuel prices in January. The studio went silent. The host blinked. The nation listened. Ntanyiwa started unpacking his frustrations about corruption, unemployment, and youth neglect. But he didn't rant, he educated. He broke it down like a teacher mixing humor with hard facts. You can't expect development when your leaders debate more than they deliver. What stood out wasn't just his message, it was his tone. Calm, witty, and dangerously confident. It was the kind of talk that makes both critics and fans stop scrolling. People in minibuses tuned their radios louder. WhatsApp groups buzzed, and even rival stations started quoting Limpopo FM. The message was clear: Malawi needs more leaders who speak sense without shouting nonsense. But if the message was powerful, then the next move was pure political theater, the handshake moment that nobody saw coming. Midway through the interview, just when the discussion got heated, the studio door opened and in walked another well-known figure, rumored to be from a rival camp. The tension was instant. You could almost hear producers whispering, "Are we live?" But Ntanyiwa didn't flinch. He stood up, smiled, and extended his hand. Cameras clicked, social media screenshotted.
Then came the part that turned Limpopo FM into a national emergency frequency. The host asked, "So, comrade, what's next for you politically?" And Ntanyiwa smiled, that calm before the storm kind of smile, then replied, "I am not here to watch Malawi fall. I am here to rise with it." Boom! Listeners lost it. Some cheered, some gasped, others grabbed their phones to replay the line. Was that a hint at a political comeback? A campaign teaser? Nobody knew, but everyone had an opinion. He went on to challenge leaders, saying, "Real patriotism is not in speeches, it's in service." Tikufuna anhu ogwiran chito. Osati Oyankula Zoka. That line, half in Chikewa, half in English, became the quote of the day. Even rival politicians couldn't ignore it. By the time the segment ended, journalists were calling it the Declaration of Limpopo, a turning point for Malawi's new political tone. But hey, this is the digital age, and what happens in the studio doesn't stay in the studio, because moment 5, the whole internet caught fire. Minutes after the broadcast, clips of the interview began flooding TikTok, Facebook, and X Twitter. Within 2 hours, hashtag Comrade Ntanyiwa trended at number 1 nationwide, and hashtag Nkhanga Zaona wasn't far behind. Memes, parodies, and remixes started dropping like hot simmer from the pot. DJs were remixing his quotes into Afrobeat tracks, while influencers debated whether he'd just announced his 2026 ambitions. But here's the crazy part. Even international listeners from South Africa and Zambia started tuning into the Limpopo FM replay. The show went global. Ntanyiwa had done what few Malawian politicians manage, turn serious talk into viral conversation. People loved his humour, respected his boldness, and dissected his words like exam students studying for finals. The internet had officially crowned him the king of mic diplomacy. Transition, but for every viral hero, there's always backlash waiting in the shadows, because moment 6, this one came with both fire and fury. Moment 6, the backlash and the blame game. Of course, not everyone was clapping. Within 24 hours, critics started their counterattack. Political loyalists called him a noisemaker. Some even accused him of chasing relevance. Ntanyiwa, however, responded with humour. If telling the truth makes noise, then let me be a drum. And that quote alone turned haters into unintentional advertisers. Meanwhile, radio analysts debated whether Limpopo FM had broken broadcast neutrality rules, while others praised the station for giving space to raw honesty. Public opinion split right down the middle, half cheering him as the voice of courage, half labelling him a master of theatrics. But regardless of sides, one thing was certain: everyone was talking about him. Political analysts even joked that Ntanyiwa had achieved what parliament debates fail to do: unite Malawians in conversation. And that conversation led to the final, most profound takeaway. Moment 7, the one that asks not what did he say, but what happens next. By the next morning, headlines were everywhere. Comrade Ntanyiwa's radio revolution shakes Malawi. But beyond the noise and memes, something deeper had changed. Young Malawians began quoting him in classrooms and discussions. Community groups started talking about accountability and leadership again. Ntanyiwa's message, half humour, half hard truth, had reignited the spirit of conversation in a nation tired of empty promises. And maybe that's the true power of that Limpopo FM appearance, not just entertainment, but awakening. Because for the first time in months, people felt like politics wasn't a faraway game, it was relatable, real, and reachable. Analysts called it the Nkhanga Zaona effect, where one interview sparked an entire country's reflection. Love him or hate him, Comrade Ntanyiwa reminded Malawi that freedom of speech is still alive and courage still matters. And that brings us to the wrap-up, the closing note for the people who keep this pulse beating, you, the viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the full breakdown of Comrade Ntanyiwa pa Limpopo FM Nkhanga Zaona. One show, 7 moments, and 1,000 reactions. If you enjoyed this sharp, fearless breakdown, smash that subscribe button, drop your thoughts below, and tell us, do you think Ntanyiwa's message was political truth or just clever drama? Don't forget to follow @GlobalPulseNewz for more bold